Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Bullock. I work in Tasman District Council Comms and I'm assigned to the Environmental Policy team. This webinar is about Change 1 to the Regional Policy Statement, along with Plan Change 81 to the Tasman Resource Management Plan. In a moment, Team Leader Jeremy Butler is going to take you through a presentation, and then we're open for questions, which we will do through chat. So if you've got a question, bang it through the chat. Just before we go, a little bit of housekeeping. No, it's not about fire exits or what to do with an earthquake rolling underneath your desk. It is about AI. So we're just saying at this moment that AI support is not engaged into this into this webinar. We are recording it, however, and we'll replay it on the Tasman District Council YouTube site. So if any of that's not, kind of works for you, or you don't want your name published, unfortunately at this moment you'll have to dive out of the webinar and to catch it when it gets up online. But presuming everything's all go, Jeremy, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to bring you an update on Plan Change 81 and Change 1 to the TRPS. Very strange not to be able to see people, so bear with me. It's a bit of a foreign thing. I like to have an audience to interact with, but that's all good. I'll forge on. Okay, so now I'm just going to see if I can get my technology to work. There we go. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see it okay. And as John said, if you've got any questions, throw them into the chat and we will address those afterwards as we go. Okay, so what we're going to be covering in this presentation, I'm just going to go through the purpose of the plan changes, give you an overview of them, along with the key changes that we're proposing for the two planning documents, the kind of the process that we've been through and the process that's still yet to come, and then finally submissions and how to make a good submission. So it's a functional webinar. This we're really just telling you what the changes are and how to make a submission in the process that's coming up shortly. Okay, the first thing I just want to do is give a really brief overview of the plan changes. So this slide here, I'll just give a quick bit of commentary, and then we're actually going to take a step backwards shortly and go over some of the process and how we got where we are. So at kind of the headline level, the Plan Change 81 provides capacity for over 4,000 new dwellings in Tasman. It provides for around 80 hectares of business land. And another important part of the plan change, as well as just the numbers, it's really a change to a different type of housing. It's to enabling more smaller homes and housing intensification. So we're really thinking about the 1 and the 2 bedroom homes because that's what we're short of currently, and also what we're going to need more of in the future as the population ages. And in summary, there really this is the plan change. It's an enabling plan change. There's very little, if anything, that does any restriction. It's about enabling more and that's for the next 10 years worth of growth for Tasman District. Okay, so just taking a little step backwards and just looking at some of the names on the call. Many of you will know this stuff, so but bear with. This is a structure, just in a very simplified way, a structure of the, and I think you'll be able to see my mouse, so I'm going to use my mouse just to indicate. Sing out, John, if you can't see my mouse moving. But under the Resource Management Act, it's the legislation we're still working under for a short time to come. It's due to be replaced, but at the moment we're still working under the RMA. And under that Resource Management Act sits a National Policy Statement for Urban Development. So there's a whole series of these National Policy Statements, or NPS, and they provide national policy direction that councils need to follow when they're preparing or altering planning documents. So that NPS is a really important document for us. Now, the NPS informed, and it requires us to do what's called a future development strategy. So the FDS was a document that was prepared and it was adopted by both Nelson and Tasman. It was a joint document in 2022. So that document at a high level set our growth direction for the next 30 years. And that's what the NPS UD requires, for us to look at the next 30 years and identify that direction. Now, the future development strategy on its own doesn't do anything. It needs to be implemented through more targeted changes actually in our planning documents that happen on the ground. So For the local planning documents in Tasman, we've got two main ones here that we're talking about, and that's the regional policy statement. Now, this is a very old document. It is required under the RMA, but it was written in the 90s. It was adopted and became operative in the 90s, and it hasn't been changed since then. So that's why we're looking at change 1 of the RPS. So as you can imagine, it's dealing with a whole lot of quite old issues that related to Tasman back in the 90s and before. So we are making just some key changes that will bring that aspects of that RPS into the present day. Okay, and then the real kind of grunt work is done by the Tasman Resource Management Plan, and I'm sure most of you will know what this is. It's a big blue book in the past, although now it's online as the TRMP online. It is the rule book. It contains the more specific policy, objectives, and the rules. It also contains the maps. So there's two really important parts of the TRMP. We all live somewhere. We all live in one of these zones. You could live in the residential zone or the rural zone, one of the rural zones. So these maps cover the whole district with the zones, and I'll come back to why that's important. And of course, the words, objectives, policies, rules. What can you do? What can't you do in those zones? And so that's really the stuff that we're gonna that Plan Change 81 is going to be making some changes to. Okay, so this is just a slide which I've included just as a general kind of context showing our growth projections. It's getting a tiny bit old, but it really shows a lot of, it shows the past trend. So the annual growth rate, this is the orange bars, and you're looking over on the right-hand side here at the scale. And that really shows that, this shows the annual rate of growth we've had, obviously with COVID there in 2020, where we had a lot of people coming back, that sort of high growth. But it's peaks and troughs. It's gone up and down, but generally it's stuck at around about overall this 1%, and that's what we're forecasting going forward, around about just under that 1% growth going forward through till 2034, and sometime off the end of the scale it does start to slow down a bit. And then the blue line there, that's the population numbers in an absolute way. So that's showing how our population has been growing and is projected to continue to grow. And yeah, you can just start to see the tail off there as it starts to stabilize in 10 to 20 years. Okay. So just a quick summary of the plan change. So I'm just going to progressively get into a wee bit more detail, sort of zeroing in on the things that are of interest. Plan Change 81 and TRPS, Plan Change 1, will do a number of things. It's going to mean more density for towns and more homes. So, and I'll come back to this, the medium density residential zone. It's going to introduce this as a new zone. 10 years that I mentioned there. And there's a number of other things that it does too. We've got more enabling rules for workers' accommodation. Really, the whole kind of approach of Plan Change 81 is to provide for homes and growth and accommodation and business in all its forms. So for workers' accommodation, for example, in a lot of the towns such as Motueka, where we have RSE workers, that at the moment they're having to be put up in residential properties in town because there is no suitable workers' accommodation. If we're able to make workers' accommodation easier, that frees up more homes for other people. So it's really kind of the whole package. Papakāinga housing, happy well, I'll just give a quick summary. So Papakāinga housing is really Māori housing on Māori land. It's focused on enabling more intergenerational housing, as well as mixing in other aspects of living in Māori communities. It might include kohanga reo or schooling or a range of other aspects that we're building in there. And a lot of those rules are quite restrictive at the moment, so we're being more enabling of those. And then there's some more consequential aspects as well around modernised transportation and business rules, because some of those are quite restrictive too, and they don't really fit in with things like the medium density zone. As things get more dense, we have to tweak some of those rules. And then the last one here is kind of a real pointy-headed planner thing. It relates to how the different commercial centres of Tasman relate to each other and how they function, so that we make sure that through planning decisions that are made, the right business activities go in the right locations, to try and have better planning over how Tasman's town centres function and how they relate to one another. Okay, so why are we changing the TRPS? And I just want to, there's a reason I'm focusing on TRPS as well, and that reason that I'll come to later, but I'll mention now, is that because they do need to be submitted on separately. So they're two different plan changes, and that if you want to make a submission on the TRPS, then that has to be done separately from the TRMP. They're two different things, but they do relate to each other. Okay, so we're changing the TRPS because we need to, as I said, it's very out of date. We need to implement the NPS UD. That has never been done. It's an important policy document, and there's a number of aspects of that NPS UD that need to be inserted into the TRPS to make sure it works at a local level. We need to identify and meet our dwelling demand for the next 30 years. And we need to reflect the FDS objectives. So it's important that we bring in these policy steps so that there's the right flow through the documents, because if that starts to break down, then the policy foundations for what we're doing start to fall over. So it's really kind of important that we have the right triggers in place in the RPS. And finally, supporting a greater range of dwelling types. So it's a focus on making sure that we have those signals from as regional issues, that we have the growth and we have the range of dwelling types signaled in there as the foundation for Plan Change 81. Okay, Plan Change 81 more specifically, so it will rezone sites. It will rezone quite a lot of sites. And shortly, probably after I've got through these slides, I will run through, happy to go over the planning maps and show you what we are proposing to rezone, and obviously go to any locations that you're particularly interested in. But I've got a list of locations here. Residential, commercial. Now the residential includes medium density residential, which I'll come to in a second. But commercial, industrial, and Papakāinga are locations as well. Okay, so I mentioned this medium density residential zone. So before I was saying that we have a very few. In fact, we only have one residential zone in Tasman, and that is the residential zone. And so what we're doing here is introducing a different residential zone. It's a zone that will enable more intensification, and it will enable good quality intensification. But the word there is enabling. It is very, very enabling. And it has got rules associated with it, but it is really just the guidelines there to make sure that what is built is has at least the basic qualities of good intensification. So we're using this new zone in Richmond primarily. There's a big area of central Richmond is to be rezoned medium density. Brightwater has a smaller area. Wakefield quite a substantial chunk. Motueka has some greenfield land, and Tākeka also some greenfield, and Mapua has a mix of both. So sorry, what I probably should have described before is that we're using this medium density zone in both a brownfield situation, which means on existing developed areas. So if you think about central Richmond, and that's an area that needs to intensify from where it is at the moment, we're using it in that context. We're also using the medium density residential zone in a greenfield environment. So where there is new development areas that are being rolled out as part of Plan Change 81, we're using the medium density zone to make sure that we're getting sufficient density in those areas, and we're also getting that variety of housing types, which we've identified as really important. And the medium density zone has been crafted, I suppose you could say, in two different ways so that it suits both those situations. There's a certain set of rules and supporting direction that suits the brownfield situation, and then there's a different set of provisions and structure that works in the greenfield situation, with the latter having what's called outline spatial plans, which I'll come to as well, which provides guidance for how greenfield areas should develop. So there's quite a lot behind this. In terms of this medium density zone, it's been a big chunk of work to make sure that it functions really well for both situations. Just a few other changes. I've sort of flagged these already, so I won't dwell on them, but workers' accommodation, in fact, I have workers' accommodation, Papakāinga, and then the framework for centres. So that's just a duplicate of what I had above. Okay, so having a look at the process. Now, Plan Change 81 and Change 1 are going through what's called the streamlined planning process. This is something that is a subset process that's in the RMA. It's at the discretion of the minister, and the minister has agreed and now directed that we use the streamlined planning process, and that's been gazetted. And what that means is that we have 240 working days to get from actually that's not correct. Sorry, that shouldn't be notification. That's from Gazettal. So sorry, that's an error in the slide. That's from Gazettal through to decisions. Is 240 working days. So it's tight and it's stressing me out, but we will do it. And so that's really from the point of Gazettal down here in this bottom part of the process. But just quickly, I'll run through how we got where we are. So the FDS 2022 that I mentioned, that was adopted by both councils. And we then did some follow-up work. So the Richmond Spatial Plan, and that was a more specific piece of work that was looking at how can we implement intensification in Richmond. What are the settings? What are we looking at in terms of boundaries? What are just to try and come up with an idea of what sort of level of intensification is going to be acceptable to the people of Richmond, and it's also going to get us the numbers of the amount of growth that we need. We also did the Mapua Master Plan, and that was quite a separate piece of work, but it was really important. It updated the old 2010 Mapua structure plan that was in place, but was out of date. So it was a really comprehensive piece of work to look at the whole of Mapua and implement the FDS, but also look at what other aspects are important to Mapua in the face of challenges such as sea level rise was one of the really big aspects there, with a lot of the town being on quite low-lying land. Okay, so that stuff was done. We then had October 2024, so what's that, a year and a half ago, we had a community awareness release. We went right around the communities, talked to everybody about what was important for them, what we should be considering as part of Plan Change 81, anything we sort of need to be aware of. Then 24 through to March 2025, we did a lot of work on the plan change and developed a range of approaches, did all our preparatory work and the drafting and so on. And then in April 2025, we released the draft plan change. And that was a full draft. There have been changes since then, but a lot of it also is still has still got that same direction. But again, we got a lot of feedback from that, and that helped us to refine the plan change. So following all that work, we end up down at May, June. There was a bit of a delay in there because of the plan stop legislation, which probably caused us about 6 months worth of delay. So, it's a bit more than we'd like, but that's where we are. So we're looking at it's June. Will be notification of both plan changes. Okay, so what notification does is it starts the formal clock for submissions. It opens it up 30 days worth of submissions, where anybody can put in a legal formal submission. That will be a public document. It's on the record. After that submission period is closed, we have a look at those. We read all of those submissions and we compile them. We have to do a whole lot of work to bring those together, and we release a summary of submissions, and that's something that will go on the website and be available. From that, everybody then has an opportunity, everybody who's put a submission in has an opportunity to lodge what's called a further submission, and that's where you can say, well, John Bullock, he's put a submission, I really like that one, but so and so else has put a submission in, and I don't like what they're proposing, I don't support that one. So you can do either support or oppose other people's submissions. All of that gets bundled up, and we go to a public hearing. Now that's going to be heard. These plan changes are going to be heard by 5 independent commissioners, and that's been directed by the minister as well. So 2 of those, including the chair of that panel, will be specialist planners. There'll also be a Māori commissioner, and there'll be 2 more commissioners who are appointed by the minister, and that will be one focused on natural hazards, and finally on not exactly sure, but more of an economics focus, so an economist commissioner of some sort. Yet to know who that is. And that panel will obviously hear the submissions and hear the evidence. It will be quite a substantive hearing. The minister has allowed for cross-examination at that hearing, so we expect that will be a very it will be what's the word I'm after? It'll be an in-depth and comprehensive hearing to make sure everything is really well tested. The hearing panel will then release their recommendations, and those recommendations will go to council for a decision. So they would go back to Tasman District Council, where the council adopts a recommendation from the panel. There will be no right of appeal to the Environment Court. Where the council doesn't adopt, it rejects a panel recommendation, the council will have to put forward its own recommendation, or adopt its own recommendation, I suppose, and that will be subject to appeal to the Environment Court. So so that's the process. Yet to see exactly how that plays out at the end, but that's the process that's been set out, and I'm happy to go over that again if people if you lost me there. Okay, I'll move on. Okay, notification timeframes. As I've mentioned, June 2026 notification starts the formal process. We will be distributing it far and wide. We'll have letters going to all affected landowners and also the neighbours of landowners. And notice will be published in local newspapers and on Newsline and Facebook and all the other channels that we've got at our disposal. I mentioned the streamlined planning process, and that's sort of summarised there, that the information will be all online. There'll be 30 days to submit. You can submit online, by email or by post. And then the final point there, as I mentioned, Plan Change 81 and Change 1 are separate. You would need to submit on each. Now, online is the best way because we've got some dedicated submission platform, a dedicated submission platform that we have available to us now, and that gives you the opportunity to go in, and the entire plan change is sort of broken up into chunks, whether that's by zoning locations or by chunks of text that are in certain sections of the plan. So you'll be able to oppose or support or recommend changes to each of those sections. So that's quite a good system, and that'll kind of keep it all structured for us. But of course, by email and post is fine as well, and we'll input that into the system. Further submissions, I've already explained that, but yep, that's to help with fairness when proposed changes can affect other people. And then I guess just a few tips on writing a submission. State what you support or oppose and why. It's quite important to be specific. Any evidence that can support your submission. And yeah, the last point there I think is an important one. We do get people who sort of say that they're concerned about something or they don't agree with something, and that's fine. But it's important to say what you'd prefer. What does that mean? What do you want done about it? What is the outcome that you would be happy with? And that can be anything from just throwing out the whole plan change. That's what you want done. That's fine. Right through to quite a specific change. So yeah, that's just an important message. Is it's good to raise issues, but it's also important to say what you think is the right thing that should be done about that with regards to the plan change. And then lodging your submission, all the kind of usual channels online. If you go to Shape Tasman, there's access in there. Emailing through to Environment Plan, or you'll find the postal is available to you as well. And as I mentioned at the bottom there, submissions are publicly available as part of the decision-making process. So just making sure people are aware of that. If you've got more questions or you want any more help, who can I ask? So at that same email address, you can email through to us there at environmentplan@tasman. We'll also have, during the submission period, we'll have kind of a duty policy planner on available as well. So if you ring the council number and ask for someone in environmental policy or relating to Plan Change 81, we'll make sure there's someone there who's available for you to talk to with any specific questions. Obviously, they're not going to be able to tell you, what to submit or help in any, really specifically, but they can give you advice. And then if you want specific advice, for your situation, then of course there's consultant planners who are available who can do that work for you as well, and they can give you advice and prepare a submission for you. And that, I think, is it. So that is a quick run through Plan Change 81. Happy to answer any questions. More than happy for people to turn their their cameras on. John,
Jeremy,
Yep.
Dean has texted and he said, who selects the Māori commissioner on the hearing panel?
Oh, sure. So that is something that council has done, but we have done it in discussion with iwi, that we've discussed with, yeah. And that person has been appointed, and it is someone that is that we understand. I'm happy to talk to Dean separately, if that's Dean Straker. Happy to have a chat about that separately. Yeah.
Okay, a question from Mark.
Sorry, I've just actually realised, John, that I did promise I'd go through the maps.
Oh,
So,
do you want to do this
so
question and then shoot through the
yeah, okay,
maps?
let's do
Okay.
that. Yeah, but I think if I nip through them, yeah, let's go. Okay.
Okay. This is from Mark. Does enabling mean permitted or controlled status for housing developments in MDR?
Right. It does. It means essentially controlled. And when I say essentially controlled, there's a few little wrinkles to that. But basically, yes, if you meet the conditions of the rule, then um, actually, no, I will go into it a little bit more detail. It's actually a restricted discretionary activity. And the reason for that, but it uses discretion in a positive sense. It provides a whole series of conditions that apply in the rule. And then if you meet those conditions, resource consent must be granted. And we've had a legal check of that is legitimate, that we are using discretion in a positive sense. So it effectively fulfills the requirements of a controlled activity. But because some aspects have some interpretation involved with them, the advice was we couldn't use a controlled activity explicitly. There was too much assessment that was needed. So it is an RDA, but council guarantees consent where you meet the conditions. Now, importantly, if you don't meet the conditions of any one of those conditions of the rule, it doesn't trip you out of that rule. Sorry, I'm getting into the technical stuff here, but that's where we end up. It doesn't throw you out to another rule, which is more difficult. It actually just introduces another matter of discretion. So you stay within that RDA rule, but additional matters of discretion are added for each condition that you don't comply with. So that's sort of how that functions. And it is enabling, and I'm happy to go through that with anybody in more detail, with the exact wording. Do you want to carry on through questions? I haven't had a look at them, John. So, oh, you're muted. Muted.
Sorry. We've gone through the chat questions, but David, you've got a question there. David Speedy.
Thank you, Jeremy. David from Public Health at Health New Zealand. In relation to the medium density housing, I'm interested in Motueka in particular and wondering about the infrastructure services for the unreticulated parts of it, and whether if you're filling pockets in, you'll also be reticulating there rather than relying on, in particular, or in specifics, drinking water from bore sources.
Sure. Okay. I probably can partially answer that. So, and this is a very good segue, thank you, onto the maps, which I'll just nip into now. Okay. So in Motueka, we have, this is all, so hang on, I should back up a little bit. The zoning, sorry, Dave, if I can come back to you, answer your question, and I'll just cover some general stuff that I'd meant to do before, and I'll come back to your question if that's okay. So, so what we've got here is some maps that you will see as more static maps when you see it online, but it goes through the zone changes that we have. So I'm just going to really quickly whip through them, and I'll come back to any specific location. Obviously, we've got Richmond here. We've got an area down at Lower Queen Street, which is Berryfield Crossing. And I won't go through all of them. A business site out at Hope, and some sites up here at Wakefield, Brightwater, and on they go. But what I just wanted to point out is that if you look at these colours, some have got sort of a solid colour, like these ones here. The black lines are just the property boundaries, but some have got this kind of these speckledy lines. And what that speckly means is that they are deferred zones. So they are as a zone change, but they only come into place. They're kind of conditional. They're conditional upon infrastructure being put in place. So that particular one that I'm on here is Rural 1 deferred light industrial, but it's deferred to become light industrial when some infrastructure goes into place. So it doesn't come into force straight away. Okay, so if I just go back over to Motueka, over here. So the only land we're looking at for Motueka is just south of the town centre, and it's a block of land that is owned by our Whakarewa Trust, and it is deferred for additional wastewater servicing because there's insufficient supply at the moment. So that will be dependent on obtaining the ability to put wastewater into the wastewater system. The only bit that isn't in that case is this bit of land at the top here, which we have made open, not deferred medium density zone, and that is owned by New Zealand Housing Trust, because we have been able to find enough capacity for that, and that's a development that not New Zealand Housing Trust, am I talking about? Kāinga Ora, New Zealand Housing, Kāinga Ora. So they are wanting to do development and reconfigure some of the state housing that's on those sites there. The rest of it is all deferred for wastewater. As part of that development, they will need to connect, David, to water supply. Water supply is available there, I think, and I think any new developments in Motueka do need to connect to potable water supply.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, no problem. Anybody else? Any other questions? I'll just while people think, I'll just have a quick whip round and show what else is happening. So if we're just starting in Motueka, we've got a little block of land here that is owned again by Whakarewa, I think, which is to be zoned Papakāinga. There's a small urapa or cemetery on that site there, but I think the balance of the land is available for some Māori housing. We have some significant sites up Motueka Valley to kind of add to the Mitten Heights area. That's been quite successful in many ways. So continuing to use that lower productivity land for more rural residential kind of product. This is a big block again of Papakāinga land that has been returned to Whakarewa Trust, and that's a new location that Whakarewa and their iwi members want to develop over time. So that's there. I'll just go over to Golden Bay, just quick tour. Over in Golden Bay, we have a couple of residential sites. So down Rotatai Road, we've got a medium density site down there that's just close to the school and works in with the co-housing area there. So it's an extension to the urban area there. Both schools available and good access into town. Whoopsies. Also an expansion of the development on the Windle Farm up at Park Avenue, and some additional industrial zone down on Motupipi Street down in town itself to provide a home for some of the industrial activities that are bulging at the seams in Golden Bay. And now I'll just go back to the Waimeas. Actually, I'll go into Mapua. We had a really good session in Mapua last night. So there's quite a lot of changes in Mapua with the areas of intensification is this block in here, which is kind of the hill area around Higgs Road. You can see Higgs Road running up there. So those two colours, it's just a very small difference in the reason for the colours, but essentially that residential area there will be able to benefit from the medium density residential rules and intensify. Then a number of the existing residential growth areas, such as Ken Drake's property here, the ex-Thorley orchard here, and the Browns Lantern here, that will all have medium density zone. Oh, now one thing I forgot to mention was about those outline spatial plans. Each of these kind of blocks of greenfield medium density zone land come with an outline spatial plan, and that is a plan that is going to be embedded in the actual text of the district plan itself. But we actually made a decision last night. We'll publish those outline spatial plans as standalone documents just so people can access them more easily, because they are very important, if you're interested in certain locations. You can see here, so these black lines that sort of snake their way through, those are actually indicative roads, which we're deleting off the planning maps because they are superseded by these outline spatial plans. So it's a bit of a shift in how we do things, bringing in these more detailed outline spatial plans to guide future development. But we're giving all of this area medium density zones so that it has the potential to zone up or to develop to quite a large extent. But there are restrictions that are in those outline spatial plans. Also commercial opportunity down on Mapua Drive here that could take the form of a slightly larger supermarket than the one that's in the middle of Mapua, which is running out of space. And then if we look up Seaton Valley, Now, I should also say that all of these sites were considered through the Mapua Master Plan. So this is kind of basically implementing the full 30-year extent of the Mapua Master Plan. And again, there's an outline spatial plan that covers this area up the valley. Sorry, hang on, I'll just see if I can take off that green. Yeah, there we go. That just takes off the indicative things. So quite a bit of this is already residential, but then there's some rural residential zones which will be upzoned to medium density. So a big chunk of medium density on this side of Seaton Valley, residential on the other side. The development here that is covered by 11B and 42A, I appreciate, so it's very small for you. They're also have been accepted onto the fast track list as well. So they've got that other potential process occurring. That is a quick run through of the Mapua sites. Coming back to Richmond, somebody interrupt me if you're bored, if you don't want to see this. So again, the medium density residential zone for Richmond, so none of this is deferred. That will all be effectively operative from immediately after the plan change, and that covers a big chunk. Now the sort of, I don't know, let's call it turquoise hatching. This is an area around central Richmond, which is named the Richmond Intensive Development Precinct, and that will basically do the same as the medium density zone, but up it just another notch. It'll allow for a slightly greater built area, a slightly larger sort of building footprint within each site, or building envelope, I'll say, in space. And then, as I mentioned, industrial zone here and mixed business zone here. So that's on the Main Road Hope to try and provide some more industrial and business capacity, because we are running very, very short. It's a real struggle to find good locations that are on stable ground, but also not on our best productive land for the ongoing development of industries and business. Heading up the valley, a lot of these sites up through here are deferred because of the Waimea trunk infrastructure that is programmed for about years 5 to 6 of the long-term plan, and that's to provide water and wastewater servicing for this whole valley. So a relatively small area of intensification for central Brightwater. Excuse me. And that's just a very, very small change to that site. And as I go up, some rural residential in a location here up above Higgins Road. And then for Wakefield, quite a big changes in Wakefield. A light industrial block here to add on to the heavy industrial that's here currently. Again, trying to provide some more jobs, more industry, more services. That's in the Wakefield location. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a jolly good cough, and John can sing for you.
Well, okay, whilst you're doing that, we've got a question in Jeremy from Jennifer Rose. Her question is, what does the proposed RMA reform spatial planning framework mean for these changes? I'm also keen to understand who funds the costs of any consequential infrastructure upgrade requirements, i.e. as in wastewater treatment plants or landfills, etc., to meet the increased demand.
Okie dokie, good questions. Firstly, the reform. I hope my voice is going to stay under control. The reform will certainly have an impact when it comes into force. So we're expecting the new legislation, which is currently in the form of a bill before Parliament, to be enacted in the third quarter of this year. That sets kind of the high-level framework and the replacement of the RMA. Once that is in place, that will trigger what's called regional spatial planning. And the RSP, regional spatial plan, will be something that council will need to work on with probably in conjunction with Nelson. Although I shouldn't announce that yet. It's not an announcement, everybody. And that will be a broad overlook, kind of like the FDS. It'll be a process that, like what was done for the FDS, but it may go into more depth and more detail on some aspects and in some sites. We're yet to see what's called the national direction. So once the new legislation comes into force, the government is promising a big suite of national direction, and that will really tell us what we have to do in that regional spatial planning, and also potentially what we can't do. Following that RSP, which will probably take about a year, potentially a bit more if we get a little bit more time. Then councils around the country will need to develop new district plans. So we will need to develop what's called a land use plan and a natural environments plan. So two separate plans. And that will take some time. I don't know exactly the timeframes on that. We have to see the final legislation. But once those come into place, they will actually supersede a lot of this work. So that land use plan will actually rezone the whole of Tasman. We'll be going to kind of a set template of zones. But of course, the issues remain the issues and the sites remain the sites. So a lot of that will roll over. So we expect that what we're doing here will have direct effect for a period of time, and then indirectly it will inform the next round of planning that will be coming over the next decade. The second part of the question was about infrastructure. The infrastructure is generally, when infrastructure is for maybe just one or two landowners, then it is built by those landowners. That's generally the way the council approaches it. But where multiple landowners are going to have benefit from infrastructure, so take, for example, what I've got on the screen, and that's quite a lot of development around Wakefield. That needs to be served by new water supply pipe and wastewater supply pipes, trunk infrastructure. That is built by council, and then the costs of those projects is funded through DCs. So there's a funding balance, but primarily funded through DCs, development contributions, DCs, which are paid for on every development. So that's broadly how the infrastructure works. So it is publicly funded, but then refunded, then recovered from developments through that DC process, and financial contributions, I should say. And that's getting into really technical stuff, but that's sort of, the current funding system. There is a new funding system, we understand, with development levies, which I am not an expert in, and we'll go no further on that because I don't know what I'm talking about. John, actually, I'll finish my tour, shall I? Sorry, quickly, and then we'll do the last. I know we're jumping around, but that's okay. So light industrial for Wakefield in here, a big area of for residential expansion through to the old railway line through there as medium density zone, but again, that's deferred for the major infrastructure. There's some residential zone out on this side here, and it looks like an abrupt edge, but that's because it's joining on to some existing zoning, which I haven't got turned on here. And then central Wakefield through sort of centred on Arrow Street and through to Pitfield Road has got potential for intensification as well. And then in other small towns, we've got a very, very small site in Tapawera that I won't even go to because it's just tiny. It's got a space for about 2 homes. And then if I head down to Murchison, I always get lost. Here we go. This has just got some small sites. Murchison's got quite a lot of residential capacity already. That's not shown here. It's just waiting for infrastructure, which is programmed. But it does have, we are adding additional industrial capacity here and commercial site, transitioning some sites from residential to commercial to try and give some more space to that business and industry capacity in Murchison. And I don't think I've missed anywhere. So that's all from me from a mapping point of view, but obviously happy to zoom back to anywhere if anyone's got questions.
David has a question for you, Jeremy. You might need to break out the crystal ball on this. You've done a lot of planning with Nelson. Will local government reforms change these concepts if a merger results?
If, and that's the big question, is if. So let's imagine for a moment that the councils are combined into one council. I think the answer is no, not directly, but eventually yes. So these changes will progress through the process. Any merger will take quite a bit of time. Inevitably, when there's mergers, our 2 district plans, so the TRMP that we currently have and the NRMP, which Nelson has, the Nelson Resource Management Plan, they will effectively be put together to make one district plan. And then when the new planning framework, so let's imagine this merger happens sooner rather than later, when the new legislation comes into place, we would then be doing a joint land use and natural environment plans. So it would be at that stage, probably in about 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, when we're landing those plans, that essentially we'd be merging it together. But in any case, the government has said that we're going to be using template zones there. So they won't be kind of bespoke Tasman zones or bespoke Nelson zones. There'll be a national framework of zones that we can use, and they'll come with nationally standardized rules. So in any event, we're going to be standardized anyway. I think that's the answer.
Well, that's all the questions in the chat.
Okay.
If just wait for a second to see if another comes through. Just very briefly, we've got a series of Meet the Planner events, which are happening tonight. There's one in the Richmond Council Chamber between 5:30 and 7. Motueka Library tomorrow between 12 and 1:30. And then on June the 8th, we're in the Wakefield Community Hall for the final one between 5:30 and 7. And they've been, the ones we've done so far have been well received. I think we enjoyed last night's session at Mapua. Plenty of good interaction there, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm. No, that was great. It was really good. It's the same presentation as we're doing here, but with a local flavour and talking about the sites that are of importance and interest to the people in those communities. But yep, I think we've done it's been a long journey, but I think it's been great to have lots of buy-in and interest from people. So.
Thanks everybody, and we'll keep you up to date with notification on that on Shape Tasman.
Just one more question in there, John, that I'm happy to answer. I've just got to the chat. Sorry, you go.
Are any changes occurring with rural housing?
So the answer
tiny
to that,
homes.
Yeah. So the answer to that is no, not as part of this plan change, but we as part of the engagement for Plan Change 81 last year in 2025, we did ask a lot of questions around tiny homes and around more rural housing, and there was a pretty emphatic approval of the ability to do more housing in rural areas. So we understand that. The granny flat legislation has come through. That is something that's under an NES, which is a national level set of rules, and those will supersede our plan. So you can now do granny flats as permitted. So that's kind of helped in that space to a point. But I expect any changes around tiny homes will be something that comes through under the new land use plan.
And given projected population growth and ageing, vulnerable, disabled folk, how many of their houses are accessible ones?
Yes, thank you, David. That's a very good question. Look, we can't absolutely require that they be accessible, but we have put some quite strong incentives in place. And, the issue here, which we're well aware of, is that as our population ages, we want people to be able to, to choose their houses, to have houses to choose from. And as they get older and maybe their mobility decreases, to not have to move out of the house they're in if they choose not to, and that it's built to accommodate wheelchairs and accessibility. So we're well aware of that issue. And what we've done, and something I haven't gone into here, but there is a design there's a design element to the medium density residential zone, and it addresses some of the urban design aspects about how it looks from the outside, but also how it functions on the inside. And so we've put some quite strong incentives, and this is in order for developers to get the benefit of the most enabling rules. They have to show how they're going to achieve these outcomes for these homes on the inside as well. And one of the things they can do is to provide accessible homes. And so it really helps them through the rules. I won't go into the details of how that works. Happy to do so in more detail, but really there's a strong incentive there that at least half of the homes are accessible homes, and if they do so, they get an easier way through the rules. Hopefully that helps.
Well, last call. I think we might have
warn everybody out.
There. Yeah, not quite. Well, just actually probably one question that somebody hasn't asked, but I'm sure it's on the back of their minds. Notification, roughly, generally, what's going on in that process? When are you expecting a date to be announced?
Okay, we're expecting the date. We're really, it's all in real time. We're figuring out what we have to do. We're trying to do it as soon as possible, because we are actually hoping to have, under that process I talked about, to have the hearing before the end of this year, based on our 240 working days. So the sooner we can notify, the better. At this stage, it's likely to be either looking at my diary, either the 12th or the 19th of June.